Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I believe this is our 5th episode now. I'm your host, Jordan Faso. So on today's episode, I just want to bounce around the league a little bit and just with some takeaways from the weekend, projecting forward as well, a little bit about, finals hopes and things for next year for some of the teams that may not be involved that I saw on their weekend. So probably the easiest way to do this is just to go through some of the matchups I thought were sort of interesting over the weekend and things the matches I think that had, sort of clear takeaways and things we can talk about today. So I'll go through some of those games, being the West Coast Gold Coast game, Port Adelaide Sydney, Geelong and Adelaide, North, Richmond, Collingwood and Carlton, GWS and Hawthorn, and then to end the day, in the podcast, today I'll be inducting a new player into the Secret Star Society, and then also, as I ended on last week, I will start a new segment called The Closing Clip, so a few interesting thoughts there as well, so stay tuned for that part. But yeah, off the top, I will start with that West Coast Gold Coast game. It was probably the best game of the round, I thought. There was a few contenders. It was a good round of footy, so pretty happy with that. But yeah, over in the West, West Coast ended up beating the Suns, what was a tight finish. And I think for West Coast, what was really impressive was, some of their older guys really stood up, and McGovern, Yeo, Duggan, they're all huge in the win. And I thought, yeah, McGovern especially in that last quarter, like his stats for the game are great. I'll just go through them. He had 21 touches, went at 85% disposal efficiency, 9 rebound 50s, 10 intercept possessions, 3 of which were intercept marks, and I'm pretty sure they were all in the last quarter. Had 6 spoils as well, so Jeremy McGovern, I won't confuse him with his brother who probably had a little less fortunate weekend, but yeah, he was at his absolute best, Jeremy, and away from the main stage and out of the Vic bias media for a few years, obviously over in West Coast at the moment. But yeah, no, I think this game was just a reminder of, for me at least, how good this guy is and how good he was, because that was a peak Jeremy McGovern performance, and yeah, everything you kind of remember him doing in that premiership year and the few years where they were peaking with that core, he did it on Friday night in the West. So good to see him back at his best. Elliot Yeo as well, I spoke about. Liam Duggan playing through the midfield was great. I thought kicked the match winner, as well as Jamie Cripps kicking that one from the pocket late, which was a great goal. If anyone didn't see it, go back and have a look. But yeah, it was a great last quarter from West Coast. The crowd really got involved and put the pressure back on the Suns. Ruben Jinby was great. He played down back. I thought that was a nice little find by the coach. What's his name? Schofield? Yeah, Jared Schofield, maybe. I think his name is, the interim coach after Adam Simpson. But yeah, I think that was a great move since he's taken over. And I spoke a little bit about a few weeks ago, sort of the lack of top-end talent coming through for West Coast in the younger sort of age bracket. But, this kid, Brady Hoff, he played an amazing game of halfback. He's played 50 games now. I think this was probably his best one. He had 19 touches, went at 95% by foot, disposal efficiency, 100% by foot with 8 kicks, 8 intercept possessions, 3 intercept marks, 5 score involvements from the back half as well. So, just a really impressive performance from number 19 for the West Coast, and playing one of the most important positions on the ground. So one to watch going forward for West Coast, and I think they've definitely found someone there that can fill that back half back role. But yeah, as for the Gold Coast side of things in that game, like everyone was coming into the game talking about Ben King's goal kicking yips, and the real yips is honestly just the whole team. There's been much made of their inability to win away from home this year, but there's not really been any development there, as I said a few weeks ago. I'll touch base after this game and see how they're going. But yeah, it's not looking great for the Suns, and people say they'd won all their games at home until last week, so just wait until they start winning away. But guess what? It's not looking like they're going to win away anytime soon. So they're just again going to miss the finals. And if you're one of the people saying that they'll be dominant next year, I just don't really see it. Like, yeah, they have talent, but by the same token that they won't lose every game away from home, they're probably not going to win at the same rate that they did this year at home. So you sort of balance those two things out, and like, where's the improvement going to come from? Because just as much as the losses away from home were made a big deal, they're both going to normalise, so it's just kind of a wash, isn't it? The issue is that the losses are clearly away from home are clearly getting in their head. So what if that sort of disbelief carries into their home fixtures next year and they aren't confident winning anywhere at all? So I don't know. I do worry a little bit for the Suns. You bring in Dimmer Hardwick as the Messiah, and doesn't really show any improvement for the team on this year from last. Once he took over from Stewie Dew, and at least Ross Lyon, when he took over the Saints for his second stint, took him to the finals in his first year as coach with a much less talented team than Gold Coast hypothetically have. So the fact that Dimmer couldn't really do much with Gold Coast this year with all the talent they have, I know there's a bit of pressure for them to make the finals, but at the end of the day, they're very much out of the spotlight. So how much pressure is there really? And as I said, with all the talent they have, which they are talented, like they've had enough peaks and enough guys go there in the last few years that makes you think that much. But to not make it in a year where the top 8 was as clustered as it has been, they had every chance to make it this year. And I start to worry about them a little bit. Like, if they do disappoint again next year, then I think we're going to start seeing the trade requests and the return home factor for some of their younger players, because it seemed like they had that belief and a bit of a bond with Stewie Dew a couple of years ago. They were building something, and then you replace him with a guy that was expected to vault them into finals, and he hasn't done that year one. But I don't see the path for them necessarily getting there year 2, apart from everyone taking a massive step forward and just relying on their talent again. But if they don't get there next year, which would then be 15 years into their tenure on the Gold Coast, then surely some of the players are starting to lose faith up there. I don't think that Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, Ben King, etc. will really want to be wasting their careers up there when they can get poached by big clubs, because it just feels like we have seen the show before with May, Prestia and Lynch. Like, they sort of got close a couple of years here and there, but they just can't get over that hump. So something to definitely not look forward to for Gold Coast's sake, but look closely at as we move forward, and see where that team sort of can progress next year. And I hope for their sake they do, because and for the AFL they're probably hoping as well. But I'll move on to the Port Adelaide and Sydney games, and I don't think anyone really saw that scoreline coming. I don't think any tipsters would have put that in their margin, but I think for Sydney's sake that was pretty abysmal performance. But for Port Adelaide, I said a few weeks ago when I started the podcast, and 5 weeks ago, that I thought that Sydney, Carlton and Port Adelaide were the 3 that at that point in time I had belief in, and Port weren't going very well at that point in time, but they're coming now, and their top 2 chance is very much alive. Brisbane in the next few weeks, who are currently second, have GWS, Collingwood and Essendon, and Port Adelaide have Melbourne, Adelaide and Freo. So Port Adelaide's run's probably a little bit easier. They're 2 points behind Brizzy on the ladder though, so whether they can make up that ground and potentially get Brisbane or Sydney at this rate. So I think that if Port get that home final, look out. And it really only took a few more guys to step up. So that's what I was sort of saying a few weeks ago. Like, they got 4 goals out of Georgiades, they got 4 goals out of Willie Rioli, Frankie Evans kicked 2, Charlie Dixon kicked 3, which was probably just a product of the blowout, and a little bit for all those guys, I guess, how many goals they scored. But I don't really expect Charlie Dixon to kick 3 every week. I think Todd Marshall probably belongs in the team over him when healthy, so that's probably a clean swap there, and you can probably rely on Todd Marshall to kick 3 goals in a blowout as well. So I feel okay about the forwards with where they're at, but the formula for Port Adelaide to win is to let their midfield carry and their backs hold up a little bit, and the forwards as well, to just finish off what the midfield generates. So they've got the talent as good as anyone inside. You got Butters, Rosie, Horn Francis, Willem Drew and Ollie Wines all go through there, so it's a pretty as good a 5 as anyone else in the league, and probably on form at the moment. Probably the best, I would say. Them or maybe Brizzy, but they've got some genuine game breakers in the midfield, and elite ball users off half-back too, with Kane Farrell and Dan Houston, depending on where he is in the lineup. But, as I said, I think the formula definitely is there. They have like the two big key backs to hold other teams forwards in the finals, and we just saw Collingwood win a premiership with Billy Frampton at full back, so there's a role to play for those guys, even if you don't necessarily think they're the best key backs in Asava Radaglia and Aliria and Zerk Thatcher to a lesser degree. But they also have great intercept options down there, with like Dan Houston takes some, Miles Bergman, and Lockie Jones on the weekend had 5 intercept marks himself. So yeah, as I said, the formula's there for Port Adelaide. I think that they, especially if they get that top 2 position, I'd be looking at them to make a serious challenge at the flag. And for Sydney, I don't know, what do you really say after a loss like that? They've dominated all year and then get to this point in the year and starting to falter a little bit. I was sort of in a holding pattern with the Swans over the last month, where they've been a little bit disappointing, and I think everyone, and myself included, sort of gave them the benefit of the doubt, saying, oh, maybe it's a bit of training and a few injuries here and there holding them back. Rampy and Tommy Papley and Lewis Malikan as well out. But, this loss definitely felt different. You can't really put that up and expect to be taken seriously regardless of what's happened previously in the year and how much they dominated the first sort of 10 weeks of the season. But as harsh as that sort of statement might be, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I think it sort of puts a nail in the coffin for them, for me at least. Like, there's too many other teams playing too well, and if they drop out of the top 2, which is a genuine possibility, the way that they're playing at the moment, they're primed to go out in straight sets if they have to travel to Brisbane or Adelaide and face those 2 teams who have gotten the better of them in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, not great for Sydney. And I looked it up, and the last time a team lost by 100 in a season and won the flag was Carlton, who scored 50 points to Essendon's 150 points in 1945. So Carlton went on to win the flag that year, but it's never a good stat when you're on the bad end of it, and the last time it occurred was during a world war. So hey, let's see what happens between, I guess, now and September, and maybe World War III is on the way and Sydney will win the premiership. But no, I don't know. I don't like their chances right now the way they're playing. So yeah, I think Port on the swing side of that are definitely on the up, and yeah, Sydney are on the way down at the moment, unfortunately for their fans and themselves. But also just wanted to touch on the Geelong and Adelaide game, which I thought was a really good game. And Adelaide, had a pretty disappointing week last week. I won't touch on them too much because I wanted to focus a bit more on Geelong here. But they looked better. No 4 tools in the forward line, so no wonder they played a little bit better and a little bit freer. So I think that always a tough match to go down to Geelong to try and play them down there. But they almost had that game, and Geelong were good enough to pull it away from them again in the end. But for me, Geelong are definitely the real deal. And I think if Dangerfield is playing at the level he has over the last sort of 4 weeks, then I know everyone's talking about Brizzy and the Dogs at the moment and how good they're looking, but I have this feeling that Geelong are very much right where they want to be. They figured out a few things over the course of the season. They had that really hot start, sort of been, playing probably 500 ball. I have to have a quick look at the ladder since their hot start, with they were 7-0 or whatever they were, but they've definitely figured out a few things along the way. And Sam de Koning is, they found that he's able to ruck now and in some matchups, so they can play. But like, for what has been a struggle position for them for most of the year, with Rhys Stanley and Toby Conway, like, they can play big with those guys if they want, or they can go smaller and play Sam de Koning and Blitzarv. So I think that that's sort of given them a little bit of lineup flexibility there. And the back line is as solid as ever. Like, I really, really trust Jack Henry and Jake Kolodjasny, Zach Tui and Zach Guthrie as well, all back there. I think that they're very much, and Sam de Koning as well when he plays back there. Like, they're just a solid back line. A lot of them can play on different sorts of players as well, so it gives you a bit of flexibility going to the finals based on who you're going to match up with. But obviously the main thing that they figured out is Tom Stewart's form. He's definitely finding form at the right time of year this year, and that is a huge bonus. So good on Chris Scott for, figuring out how to bamboozle some of the other coaches. So what they're sort of doing, I think it's been talked about a little bit, is like, he had that struggle period through the middle of the year where, teams were tagging him down back and not letting him play that free intercept sort of role, or like making it hard for him to do so at least. So, what Chris Scott did was like, all right, I'm going to start him in the midfield. So once Tom Stewart found his sort of form in the midfield, and it sort of became the situation where you got to try and deal with him and Danger's size in there and their physicality, which in itself became a bit of a struggle. I think my boys the Hawks found that out when they went down to the Cattery, and those guys were just too big. But if like teams then lose track of Tom Stewart when he does go back from the stoppage, so like if he subs out of the stoppage and ends up on the back line, like teams are able to lose track of him. So it just takes up so much time and attention for the opposition coaches to figure out what the next step is. So do they literally have someone follow him into the stoppages and then back, and just have one person assigned to him, which then causes you to maybe lose your structure around the stoppages or in the back line, or force you to have one extra back all the time, which allows Geelong to have another inside the stoppage? Or do you try have a midfielder and a defender separately assigned to him based on wherever he is? So, sort of have two sort of pseudo taggers and then just do that based on where he is. But, you sort of risk losing him completely in the transition if you don't switch effectively between those two players. And then how much is worrying about him to this degree impacting your own game plan? Like I said, like, are you losing an advantage elsewhere on the ground because you're so focused on him? So is it just better to let him play the intercept role and concede that he's just going to have to he's just going to get to that position and start intercepting at some point, and figure out your game plan and account for that? So I think that good on Chris Scott for figuring that out. That's one of the better moves to free up a player I can remember happening mid-season at least, And then on top of that, they've got plenty of talent up in the forward line. I think that's probably their strongest area. You've got Jeremy Cameron, the Dart. You've got Tyson Stengel, Brad Close, Ollie Henry, who hopefully can become a bit more consistent with his footy. Shannon Neal has become like Tom Hawkins light, even though he's probably bigger than Tom Hawkins. I'd have to check their bios, but you've got Hawkins, who like potentially could come back if he's healthy and playing well. You've got Brian Myers and Ollie Dempsey, who has been a revelation for those guys this year. So I think that forward of the ball they're looking very good. So it just definitely hinges on their midfield. Can Danger sort of be that guy and not get injured in this last little stretch or in the finals? And sort of just comes down to how much we trust Tom Atkins, Tanner Bruin, Jack Bowes, Max Holmes if he plays in the centre. But, if those guys are able to break even and their defence holds up with Tom Stewart back to his best, then they really have a shot at winning this, the flag. They arguably have the best coach as well. So, I don't know, they're looking pretty good for me, and just sort of quietly going under the radar a little bit, I think. And I know they had that loss down to the Doggies down in Geelong a couple of weeks ago, but I still like what they're sort of building and how they're building under the radar at the moment. And I say it hinges on their midfield because a lot of the other top sides do have a clear talent advantage compared to the Cats in that area. So if they do break even, then I think they're a genuine chance with the talent they have around the ground in the other positions. So the Cats, as much as it pains me to say this, are looking very good again. Let's move on to the Spoon Bowl. So we had North Melbourne versus Richmond, the loser likely to be the Wooden Spooners for the year, but much in the same way that Gold Coast were unable to handle the pressure once West Coast got a roll on. I think North Melbourne really handled the situation quite well against Richmond on the weekend. They were up, and the Tigers sort of were coming in that last quarter, but it's obviously not the Tigers of old, but still got a few seasoned vets in there, and a little bit of that fear of the old Tigers dynasty maybe when they were making that charge in the last quarter. But the North looked a little shaky for a moment there, but they steadied very well. So I think, like as I said a few weeks ago, I will do a bit of a deeper dive on North and the talent they've got coming through at the moment. But I think the only thing I would say is I do have some questions around their key position players still. Like, the only ones you're feeling great about are Jerry and Larky, and then Charlie Combin as well is playing well, but he's only done it for sort of this year, I guess, at this point, but Tristan Jerry as well, but I think what he's produced is very much real. But with Zerha as well re-signing last week, it seems like the tide is sort of turning in North Melbourne, which is good for them. And as for their young talent that they've had, like a lot of them being midfielder sort of picks in the last few years, but I don't really have any questions about those guys. And the only one that wasn't looking absolutely great was Zane Dersma, who showed in one play on the weekend why he was sort of taken 4th overall. What a grab. If anyone hasn't seen that one as well, I suggest you look that one up. That was an absolute screamer. So that was good effort by North, and good to see that they can win the game that they're probably expected to win at that point in the year. And for Richmond's side of things, I sort of spoke about the trading of their players, and I think that on the weekend, when your last real chance to win a game for the year, and I think it's showing that it's time for a full-scale rebuild for them, and keeping a couple of the senior boys around, but it's probably time to cash in on these guys while other teams still value them, and you can get something for them. Much anticipated match as well on the weekend was the Collingwood-Carlton game, as always. So, Collingwood, on their side of things, good on them for getting it done for Pendles, and I don't think they will make it through to the finals, but, 400 games for one of the best players in the modern era, and to win that against your arch rival sort of feels like a nice ending for the season, even if the players are unable to defend the flag from last year. But more on the Carlton side, I think, they're just sort of falling short of expectations at the moment. They weren't really able to capitalise on their dominance in the first quarter, and really, really hurt them. Teams are just able to take away what they want to do too easily at the moment. So, defensively, they sort of got exposed. I thought their zone was pressed a little bit too high. There was a gap in the midfielders and defenders that allowed some of the Collingwood sort of smaller players and high half forwards to get a bit too much space out the back, and they weren't able to generate enough turnovers in their forward half to sort of outweigh what was happening the other way. So I think that was one thing where they got exploited. I think their midfield wasn't able to dominate for 4 quarters, which obviously there's going to be momentum shifts within the midfield, but I think that for them they just needed a bit more of a complete performance. And Pito only got going in the last quarter against Darcy Cameron, who's probably a little bit outmatched by in the end. I think that that surge where they were coming, where Pito was getting clear hits and allowing Cripps and Walsh to clean up in the middle, they were dominant in that period, but it was a little bit too late. And I think Collingwood went after Charlie and Harry pretty convincingly, and I don't think either Charlie or Harry would be happy with their games, and Billy Frampton just sort of bodied Harry Mackay all night, and Charlie was much the same, taken out of it by Darcy Moore. And I don't know, they had a chance to win it. I know they had a chance to win it after the siren with Mitch McGovern, and condolences to him, because that looked rough to be out there in front of that many guys and just shank it. But it was against the Collingwood team that they should have beaten on form, and based on the form and expectations for the rest of the year as well, they shouldn't be losing these games. And it's been the theme of the last sort of month for Carlton, and much in the same way that Sydney were. I was sort of gave them the benefit of the doubt for a little bit, but after that one, again, you can sort of give them the excuse just because it was a little bit of a final for Collingwood, but even then, you just got to win them at some point, and it sort of sets it up for a big week against the Hawks. Sunday, 1 o'clock at the G was going to be a fascinating game, and it almost acts as an elimination final definitely for the Hawks, but for Carlton, if they lose against the Hawks on Sunday, it's going to be a big final couple of weeks for them. Which brings me to the GWS game against the Hawks, which was very, very hard to watch. Not as hard to watch as the Port Adelaide game earlier in the year, but it had a few similarities between those two games, with GWS just sort of clawing the win away from the Hawks at the end. But I think credit to GWS, they were just stuck in the game long enough and were too good in the end, and their sort of top end talent really showed. I think Jesse Hogan, I've got to do a deep dive on this guy at some point, and but his game is just so clean, so simple as a key forward. He makes it look. It's not even simple. He just makes it look simple. I think is the best way to put it. He's got great strength. He's got great hands, and he's got great timing as well with his body work. So I think to watch him for any key forward, he's probably the benchmark right now. I think that he's tearing teams apart for fun of late, and what a good fun sort of feeling. Good fun sort of career arc that for this guy. It's been a great story, and I'd love to see him win the Coleman come through this year. So on the broadcast they said, well, while the Hawks are up, at least they said, the Giants aren't going to be able to win if their plans to kick it to Jesse Hogan and pray he can just sort of win one-on-one contests enough. But he did that enough to keep them in the game in the first place. But the Brent Daniels last quarter was just phenomenal. The Hawks had dominated the stoppages all day, and then he just flipped that script in the last quarter with his pace and cleanliness around the ball. So great move by Adam Kingsley to put him on ball and really expose some of the Hawks midfielders in terms of their maybe a little bit lack of pace in there. I think that Warple and Newcomb and Day all have a good burst from the stoppage, but maybe aren't the fastest guys over that sort of 20-30 metres. So Brent Daniels was great, and I think that as well it highlighted one of the Hawks' biggest issues of not having a proper key defender at the moment, which was sort of only exacerbated by James Sicily's shoulder and his inability to intercept at the moment. I think that definitely Hogan's game puts an underline on the Hawks recruiting team to find that key defender, and hopefully they can in the off season. But I think the Giants, they're primed very nicely at the moment. I don't know if they have enough guys all playing at their absolute best to win it all right now, but they'll be ready to play whoever, wherever. And I think Toby finding form at the right time of year as well definitely helps. So showing how much of an impactful player he can be still. For the Hawks, tough loss. A lot to learn from, and hopefully they can still sneak into the finals. But just too good, GWS. And for this week's Secret Star Society inductee, as disappointing as the Blues were on Saturday night, I'm going to nominate one of their small forwards who definitely is not spoken about as much as some of the other Carlton forwards, and that is Lockie Fogarty. I don't know, they pronounce these differently on the broadcast, but we'll go with Fogarty. As I said, definitely not spoken about as much as some of the other Carlton forwards with Harry, Charlie, Matt Owies, and probably even Jesse Motlop gets a bit more attention, and definitely Jack Martin, rightly or wrongly. But I think that for Lockie Fogarty, he's just a solid half-forward player. He can hit the scoreboard and doesn't waste opportunities. It doesn't need to be the start of the show, but he's just one of those guys who's, his stats may not show up in abundance, but he always shows up in the right place, making the right tackle or kicking a needed goal. And you saw that on the weekend a little bit as well. He popped up a couple times, and I think he's just when he's involved in the contest, you just notice him. I feel like when I watch Carlton games. But I ran his stats, and based on the season so far, and his profile comes out most similar to this list of players, just for everyone to get a sort of a feel of the type of player we're dealing with here. So it's James Jordan, Lockie Fogarty himself, Mark O'Connor, Mateus Philippou, Darcy Wilson, Lockie Murphy, and Jamie Cripps. And the Jamie Cripps one is probably the one I like the most, and who I think that Lockie Fogarty can sort of model his game after. That reliable half forward who's not necessarily the most athletic player or the most absolute most skilled, but he's just consistent performer and always finds himself in the right spots and contributing to the team. So I think that some of the stats I want to touch on for Lockie Fogarty that sort of exemplify that are his tackling right now is definitely keeping him in the team. He's averaging 3.2 a game for a small forward and 1.7 tackles inside 50, which is elite for his position. So definitely providing Carlton with some value there. His 4 ground ball gets per game is above average at his position, and given they probably happen forward of centre, it's a pretty useful thing to be able to have someone who can grab those ground balls and keep the Blues moving into their forward 50 where they're going to generate those looks. He's also averaging 1.5 goal assists a game, which is accompanied by his 5.4 score involvements a game. So the goal assists are elite at the moment for his position, and the score involvements as well are above average. He's only kicking 0.6 goals per game, but his accuracy on goal, 64.3%, is above average in his position, so showing he's not wasting them when he does get the chance, which, obviously the goals is sort of below average for his position, but given the talent that the Blues have up forward and their sort of reliance on Harry and Charlie kicking most of their goals, it's actually not. He'd probably get a few more opportunities in a different team, but it's just sort of the construction of the Blues forward line at the moment. So yeah, probably not as highly regarded as some of the other guys that I've talked about in this Secret Star Society segment, but I just sort of like the way he goes about his footy, and he's a good, smart player and just a really solid player, I think, and most teams would really like to have him on their list, and he's just a plug-and-play sort of player in the forward line, which you obviously need when your team's filled with stars, which so many are at the moment, and especially Carlton, so yeah, that's why he's this week's Secret Star Society inductee. So he joins the list of Bodie Uland, Darcy Wilmot, Ed Richards, and now himself. So we'll get a team going by the end of the year, and see who's made the list at this point in time. And to close things out today, I will start this new segment, the closing clip, and it's probably a bit more of a serious one than a fun one, I guess, but I just wanted to talk about the Tyson Stengel situation that happened over the last sort of week. So, like, as a coach of a footy club, I think sometimes they might get confused that they're not the PR maestros that they generally might think they are, because everyone listens and applies your message within the club, it doesn't mean that it's just going to translate to the outside world, and maybe they don't care how it translates. But some of these quotes from Chris Scott about the Tyson Stengel situations didn't really sit well with me. Include him saying, yes, we've got a role to help educate them, but we don't treat them like kids, and we certainly don't take a punitive approach when we are seeking to punish every little misstep. It wasn't ideal, but it wasn't a huge issue either in our minds. It was one of those things that's going to happen every now and again, and we feel in a really good place to perform well this weekend. So, I don't know. He's saying like they don't treat them like kids. Well, like maybe you should punish him because he's just signed a contract extension. Your reward is finding him hospitalised a couple of weeks later after a night out. I know. Okay, it's not ideal that he was hospitalised and not a huge issue. Okay, that's it. Again, your expectation is that it's going to happen every now and again. Like, there's this sort of like, these quotes just sort of confused me a little bit, and there was like not a heap of coverage about it on the news, or at least felt very controlled by the media, or something was just weird about it, where this dude has a history of off-field issues, right? Like, and he's found unconscious, and the through line is that we're wrapping our arms around him. But I don't know, it just seems very odd to then go and play him that week after he's been found unconscious. So I don't really know what the culture is like down at Geelong. I'm not within the four walls or anything, but to me, that's not really wrapping your arms around him. That's not protecting the player. That's sort of enabling that behaviour by setting a standard, for the rest of your team that, you can go ahead, get absolutely written off mid-season, find yourself unconscious, for all we care. As long as you're ready to play on Saturday against the Crows, it's all good. Like, I don't know, it's just a very weird situation. He was unconscious like 6 days before the game, or 7 days before the game, and I won't speculate about why or how it happened. Like, that's just irrelevant almost. But, then to let him play a full game with the potential for head injury, which is like meant to be an issue for the AFL right now and clubs, like, to allow him to do that after the fact shows like sort of a complete lack of care and ignorance for head injuries. And like, I just think that the AFL, whoever is in control of player welfare at the AFL, they should have probably stepped in. It's just like, he's had an incident on the weekend where his body has suffered trauma to the point where it's shut down. It might have been a head injury, I don't know. But either way, it can't be great for your brain to be unconscious in general and then to go out a week later and play footy when we're meant to be caring about head injuries. I don't know. Like, the doctors apparently ticked it off, but whatever caused it, like, I don't really know, but not only do you not suspend him, if it was his fault, I don't know if you do, but like, you don't even give him the week off to recover from it. Like, it's just a very weird situation, and I can't really help but wonder what the media storylines would have been if it was another player, if it was Clayton Oliver, for example. I think it's just a very much swept under the rug and generally sort of a bit gross. They're sort of downplaying the situation, which really isn't that bad in isolation if they want to do that, like, from a PR perspective, but like, it's the actions following that sort of make me feel it was a bit weird. And you're coupling like the fact that they clearly didn't take a conservative approach regarding his health. It just feels very fake and mismanaged. I think that it wasn't them acting in the best interest of the player's welfare, and like, I think sometimes you actually need to protect the player from himself, because like, as we saw a few weeks ago with the Petrarca incident, like, have we learned anything since then? Like, getting him back out on the field is not automatically good for the player because he's doing what he does best, or he wants to help the team, or he doesn't want to let the team down. Like, letting him forget about everything else that's going on and just playing footy. Like, no, like, at some point you've got to actually pretend to care about the player and not just say that you're a mentor and a family without actually following through acting as such. I think that despite what the on-field implications may mean, if Tyson didn't play, like, I think you have to do what's best for the guy. And like, I don't think in any scenario letting him play that weekend, like, whether that's punishing him or just for being unconscious for whatever happened, if it was his fault, then punish him. But I don't think that's a bad PR thing to do, and I don't think it's necessarily not wrapping your arms around him either. Like, you're just saying, like, mate, just pull it together a little bit if it was his fault. And if it wasn't his fault, the worst thing that still happened in this situation was he was unconscious and had to go to hospital, and you let him play a week later. Like, the AFL has it may not have been a concussion situation, but his body still shut down. I just think that, I don't know, he was very, very mismanaged by all parties, and I think that one to learn from, I think, for Geelong. And anyway, leave it there for the week, and I hope everyone has a good week and enjoys the footy this weekend. Alright guys, catch you later.